Let's begin now. Hello, and welcome to Piece of the Week. Unfortunately, Cameron cannot be here tonight, for he has been suffering with the migraines all week. His mother, pounding his head with an abundance of irritations, has caused a hole in his brain the size of Uluru, and now we are waiting for him to come back. But tonight, myself, Janosch, the bearded lady, will help you understand something different, something other than Egypt tonight. We are going to be talking about the Dogu statues from ancient Japan. Japan, for those of you who sit on the other side of the water. And these figures are ones of great controversy, and people thinking this thing and the other thing, and we are going to look at them in some more detail from both sides of the story. And hopefully, you will find something about this that makes you appreciate them on a deeper level. I know I did. Few statues made by ancient man have stirred more controversy and robust debate than the Dogu figures of ancient Japan. Offering to our modern eyes a visual language akin to the finest conjured creatures from the Lucasfilm studios. Numbering in the thousands, the Dogu figures were made during the Jomon period, 14,500 to 300 BCE, in Japan's earliest bloom of civilization. What is quite a strange phenomenon is the emergence of goddess or fertility figures worldwide. Not simultaneous occurrence, but often independent of each other. They are mostly female figures with the wide hips and prominent breast and pubic regions formed in the artworks made of bone, stone, and clay. As mentioned, a great variation of figure styles have been found. Some grouped together as if a family has been deposited in the ground. Some with distinctive heart shapes, some with the flared legs, and others with exceedingly plump and charming physique. Characters, all of them. What was their purpose? This is the point of contention for two schools of thought. The clash that they have over the very existence of these clay creations. The archaeological community describes the figures as magical figures that were either buried with the deceased, smashed, or broken in a ritualistic fashion for an unknown reason. Some limbs seem to have been removed on purpose, leaving the rest of the body intact. Intricate patterns inscribed and pressed via rope and weave created the figures of intrinsic detail. A relatively small portion of the figures have distinctive goggle eyes, and it is these figures. They are the principal source of controversy flamed by the ancient alien school of thought. They were first pointed out by the author Erich von Däniken in his landmark book, Chariots of the Gods. The Dogu are described in terms of ancient astronauts. The bulging eyes and intricate patterns are representation of breathing apparatus and spacesuits. This is a subjective viewpoint, of course, and one only needs to look at the bulky early astronaut suits that were all over the media during the time of von Daniken's book to see the visual stimulation for the theory. For this was the time of the moon landings and the space race, and everybody was familiar with the bulky astronaut suits. And then the reappraisal of the Dogu figures was like something out of this world. Maybe they are. The name Jomon means to impress with the robe. It means to impress with detail, incised detail. That's what Jomon means. It was a name used to describe the material remains of the cultures that created them. And in Japan, Jomon means that, to impress with detail. And of course, that is the signature of this artwork. The amazingly detailed works in pottery, in ceramic ware, and figures. It's amazing. Up until recently, the Jomon culture were lauded as being the inventors of pottery and ceramic ware. Now, this has changed since the Chinese cave has been found to have even older. What was 14,500 years old in the Jomon culture has been pushed back into the 20,000 years ago, into the Chinese efforts. But that is not to take anything away from the Jomon culture. It happened independently, without the cultural influences of the East Asian region. So Japan is distinct in a number of ways. Most notably, even the earliest pottery was modeled and imprinted with weaving from the rope. The ropes were pushed into the soft clay before firing, creating these wonderful patterns of great intricacies. And this only got more and more refined as the techniques were evolving, until the later Jomon period, where great masterpieces were now available to be seen. Now, one may ask, how did this clay business start? It is something I've always found fascinating. And this is why there must have been a time around a campfire where they were maybe near a river or something like this. And they were all sitting around having their hunter-gatherer foods for the day and talking about how wonderful life is in the mountains. But what happened is this bonfire that would have been, made to keep them warm overnight, on this creek bed or the river bed where there was some soft clay. There must have been people around it playing around with the clay and throwing it into the fire, and inevitably, when you're modeling a ball of clay, it just forms into a ball if you play with it. And you can imprint it. It would have taken one genius person to stick their fingers in it, two of them, 2 fingers, and they would have had 2 eyes instantly, human face staring back at you from a blob of clay. And this would have made everyone around the campfire laugh and go, ha ha, for the first time, look what I can do. I can make a face out of the clay. Well, what can you do, Ugg? Well, I'm gonna put a mouse on it as well. And Ig, his wife, said, I don't want this is rubbish, and I'm throwing it into fire. And then the next morning, they wake up and brush away the scales from their fish from the night before. And what is in the ashes staring at them? A little face, a clay face, staring at them from the night before. It didn't go away. And they picked it up, and it was still warm to touch, but it was no longer just a piece of clay. It was hard as a rock. And Ugg and Ig was so excited by it. They show everybody. And this is how this information would have been disseminated amongst all of the different tribes and families throughout this region. And that is how it spread. Technology spreads by word of mouth. And it was all by a lovely fire one night. Because they did not have the internet back then. They only had the stars, the sounds of the nightlife, of the insects and the birds, and the wolves howling, or bears. I don't know if Japan had the wolves. It's a cliche, isn't it? But anyway, whatever it was, they had to find other ways to amuse themselves by the fire. And it's not hard to imagine that a bit of soft clay in this one particular place started the whole revolution in ceramics.
I so want more Von Daniken talk. More Von Daniken, please!
The Chariots of the Gods was also a film as well as a book. And it is in this film you will see them much more towards the end. And it is a great, great film to get your mind open to the possibilities of this concept of the aliens and the Earth making contact years ago. It is only 2 hours long, perhaps, but it is 2 hours you will always want to remember. But it did feed into these years later a renaissance of the thought with ancient aliens. It inspired the Ancient Aliens series by looking at ancient artifacts around the world and superimposing a belief system of the modern era and appreciation of the cosmos upon the ancient mindset that created these pieces. Now, that is not to say that the ancients had contact with beings that we are not aware of. No one is saying that. But you cannot say that every single thing that looks like an alien was directly because of an alien. The Japanese people were coming out of the Ice Age, you understand, so it was cold. And look at the patterns on these pieces. They have got great details, suggesting also that they're weavings of the mulberry tree fabric. They made their costumes out of mulberry bark, for example. This was being replicated in clay. So the patterns, the weaves, the swirls were not some alien pattern. This is pure symmetry of human invention. That's just what it is. It is not a brazing apparatus or wires like in the astronaut suits that he is mentioning. It's just not. It's the goggle eyes, where the goggles were not invented then perhaps, but maybe they were in a kind of way. Maybe they made some kind of snow goggle out of bark or whatever, and this way of showing it in the clay is just a refined way of displaying it. They probably in reality were quite crude, but snow blindness is no laughing matter. Nobody wants to get that. If you can have a little slit there so you can see through without the snow pounding your face, little bruising hole, that is what I think was going on there in the cold Japanese winters. They weren't running around naked, were they? They would have been doing their very best to keep warm. And clothing would have been very important. And in the later Japanese culture, the fabrics And the designs are incredibly elaborate because they've had the hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years of practice to make the fabrics. And it is amazing to understand this, the silk and all of the different garments that you see in the Japanese cultures of later eras show an extreme refinement. And I think it is all linked back to this practice. But whether you want to believe it or not is entirely up to you. I make no judgment. I see both sides of this story. The archaeological side and the DNA side of things to point to the direction of what's going on in these regions.
Oh, for goodness sake, just tell them about your encounters and stop beating around my bush.
Okay, now let's have a look at some of the figures I have here in the collection. We'll start with this one, which is a very famous one. I will put it up on the screen so you can see it clearly. And this one is a baby version in immaculate condition. I've mounted it on a stand and it is in the store if you want it. It is going to be going in there soon if it's not there already. And I love this one. It has got such a great personality. Somebody just dinged. This one is my sister's favorite. She's been saying, please bring back the dolly Dogu. She calls it the dolly Dogu. I can understand why. This is an example of the heart-shaped variety. You can see the shape of the face is roughly like a heart. The details of the fabric are evident on every surface of this figure. On the back, you know, this is pre-kimono by thousands and thousands of years. And here we have something on the back that kind of reminds me of the kimono thing, that lump they have on the back, like a hunchback. I don't understand that. But I will put this one up on the screen so you can see it clearly. It is a favorite. My sister always going, I want a dolly Dogu. Well, here they are. I've got one in the eBay store of Down Under Pharaoh and in the downunderpharaoh.com. So there's only two, so run along and find one. And if you want it, you have it. It is wonderful.
Do you have any new ones?
Thank you, Monkey, for your input. This is a new one that I have been working on, a large version of the famous one. It is intricate as always, but this one is the largest of the ones I have yet attempted. It won't be ready until the end of the year or the turnover of the decade. Thank you. Thank you for watching Piece of the Week, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed recording it for you. If you like it, please give it a thumbs up, and if you would like to subscribe for some other videos, then please do so by hitting the subscribe button and hitting the ding-a-ling bell, he was telling me to say. I don't know what a ding-a-ling is, but it is a bell that goes ding and maybe ling. I don't know. But I hope you find a way so we can be together again. So thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my candy heart. Goodbye for now. Just pounding and pounding with irritations. And these ones are the ones with the goggle eyes. Very, very, very spooky.